87% of white Americans say they're not aware of an increase in hate crimes. Said anti-Asian racism isn't a problem that should be addressed.
Found that Asian Americans are still largely invisible in society.
The family says they were very traumatized by this incident.
Now he says he is living in fear.
A reminder that there is still a lot of work ahead.
People use our silence as a weapon against us. When we're in a big crowd, which is invisible faces, because we rarely ever get to tell our stories, it's hard for people to really relate to who we are. My experience in America hasn't always been negative, but when something negative does happen, it lingers. This is where I lived when I first moved to the US in 1990. My two sisters lived in one bedroom. My parents lived in the second bedroom. And I stayed in the living room until I was 16. People don't really know about the poverty that I went through, the environment that I grew up in, mentally abusive environment that I grew up in because of the unprocessed trauma that my dad went through. My dad went to war when he was 16 and he came out when he was 24. He went straight into marrying my mom, and I don't think they ever had time to really process what they had to go through. They just had to survive one way or another. In school, I remember just being made fun of a lot when I tried to speak because of the language barrier. A lot of the American-born Vietnamese kids just didn't want to be my friend, and it was very uncomfortable, and I just felt like I was never cool enough or I was never accepted. I went to school in the 90s. There wasn't much about Asian studies. There was like no literature that we were exposed to that talks about Asian American experiences. We haven't had that many opportunities to tell our stories other than the Vietnam War. But most of the time when they speak of the Vietnam War, it's always from the Western perspective. You rarely hear stories from actual Vietnamese immigrants that actually went through the war.
A beautiful bronze statue will celebrate the friendship between the United States and the Vietnamese military.
I think I'm blessed to be Asian, but also born in America, so there's both sides. When I came back from the military, I was at a Starbucks. I was trying to open the door for an older Caucasian lady. I guess the timing was off, so I ended up letting go of the door and it shut in front of her face. And I opened it again, and she said, "In America, we say sorry." Those experiences affected me mentally because I had just come home from the military. I went from a place of feeling pride and integrity to coming home and feeling like I'm rejected in my own country. When people tell me, go back to your China, go back to your country, I was born here and I identify as American, even though I'm a Vietnamese American, I'm American. I find it very odd and very insulting. This country was founded by immigrants. Everyone contributed to making the country what it is today.
You saw Asian.
Filipino little
Asian piece of shit.
I'll kill you, I'll decapitate you.
Sadly, as it seems, it's very normalized for the Asian community to be hated on. Like, for example, when in San Francisco, the grandma was beaten up by a pacifier because they're Asian. Based on my experience back in 2019, I used my social media platform to become a voice for one of my now friends because she was being bullied back in high school. There were videos of her being hit, having her hair being tugged at the assembly at my high school. Everyone sees it, and the video was circulating around the school, but no one said anything. So I took my platform to call for action to make sure these girls don't do that again to other people. You had to be more aware of your surroundings, because sometimes you can't think the good of other people because they always think the worst of you. Right now, the main issue is the lack of education, and also specifically we're exposed to different cultures. But I know once you step outside in California, there's not a lot of Asian communities, and that's where people create this closed mindset about the Asian community.
Mr. Golightly, once again, I must protest!
People didn't really identify with us before. On the media, you don't really see Asians unless we're being used to show that girls are being prostitutes, like the masseuse therapist, or guys are like geeks and weirdo, or like kung fu villain. Easy to blame a population that you don't have any association with, like you're completely disconnected with.
Vietnamese Americans, we need to go to do more out there so that we can have a voice in the mainstream media.
It's just something that is assumed by Western cultures that all Asians are Chinese, and it's something that we do talk about in our film as well.
That's the origin. We wanted to talk about racism and social invisibility. So it shows to the new generation that it's a possibility that they can do it.
Now more than ever, the Vietnamese community is becoming more socially conscious. We have organizations such as Vama, who just published an anthology of personal stories of people who stood up against hate and discrimination.
My piece is on the top coat. I wanted to be able to share the impact of growing up in Persevere, like how that has molded me as a woman, as a leader, but also like how those sort of microaggressions or some of those experiences that those women had like really impacted them as well. So this book is a physical representation of that community strength and like individual resilience. I think oftentimes when I say things, I'm worried that no one's actually listening, but it just shows like someone is listening.
So I am working on a film called Summer, Winter, Summer. It addresses my experience as a gay Asian man growing up here in America, where I experience a lot of racial rejection in the dating world. When I go on apps and online platforms, the most generic profiles I see is no Asians. I struggle to deal with that a lot because I just couldn't understand why is there so much hate towards the Asian men. And so I just didn't have an outlet to talk about it. So I felt like I needed to talk about it in my own film because that's my story. Like if I don't tell my story, who's gonna wanna tell my story? I want to use my experience so that I can have a voice and tell them where I've been and what I've gone through. My film can allow people to relate to me and other Asian people like myself.
Back then, in the early 90s, it just seemed kind of like not masculine to do that kind of thing. I wasn't raised to seek help in that way. But nowadays, things are changing. I think people, especially Gen Zers or people on TikTok, they like to highlight the better sides of being Asian or Asian American. As an actor, things are kind of slowly changing as well. There are more roles available, and not the 90s are stereotypical Asian roles of just like geeky Asian or that Asian guy you went to high school with. You know, it's not like that so much anymore. Now it's like normalized, or someone that actually is more real and relatable. Asians should band together and to speak up, make some noise because they're too quiet and they don't want to cause trouble and stir the pot, so to speak.
No justice, no peace. Asian Americans won't be silent.
I just couldn't understand why we are being targeted when we're already hurting so much, and yet we become the receiving end of hate and violence.
I was taught, at least when I was young, when I'm in pain, I have to endure it. I know like it's easier to take in the pain than stand up for yourself and like fight that pain. But I think that's what's also hurting us in the long run.
And so when the seniors feel that they cannot fight back because they're too weak, they either withdraw or they freeze and they stay isolated inside the house, which exacerbate the condition for their mental health.
All our family has been through the same amount of trauma that we have, but the difference is that we were able to voice our drama out and some people are not.
Our parents, they didn't have the time to dream. They became friends, they had to survive. And now our generation, we can show to the kids, hey guys, you can do it.
I think just realizing that these groups exist really help with the message of inclusivity, being like, we are here and we have a story and we are human and we deserve the spotlight as well.
We can also organize community events to be able to bring people together to reinstall the message that as a community, we are still there for each other. As a community, there are still resources available, and it is also safe to interact with each other as a community.
I think people are making moves, and so it's either get left behind or contribute to the cause. So I would say kind of open your eyes to what's happening and where things are going.
I take interest in everyone's story. I love learning about people's experience, where they come from, because I'm a storyteller and I want to really relate and connect and learn, because I feel like there's no better story than a human story. I come to the realization that why do I need to seek validation? Why do I seek permission to be here? I belong here. And as I think the message that I want to send to younger people who are struggling, going through what I went through, is that we don't need anyone's validation. We just need to have a stronger foundation of self. When you realize who you are, nobody's gonna be able to take that away from you. If you feel like you are American, you belong here, no matter how many people can tell you, it doesn't matter. You belong.